I've often said that the key to a moral revolution is the implementation of mandatory philosophy classes taught in every high school. Like, school teaches you to solve math problems and recite historical facts and shit, but I don't remember them ever covering the foundations of basic thought. This became especially apparent to me a couple days ago in a conversation I had with a former high school classmate. He's one of those smart guys, you know? He was in Science Olympiad and got good grades and all that crap, but you'll soon see his level of logical competency and reasoning skills. I guess this video will be like one of those spectacles you watch for the pure amusement of seeing weak arguments crushed to bits. So I was posting one of my quick takes on Instagram, this time about how infant circumcision is a complete violation of human rights. So my buddy here, who we're going to call Columbabesh for convenience, contacted me to tell me why circumcision
is not only okay, but good.
So inevitably we steered toward an hours-long theological debate, all through a social media texting app. From that point, it was pretty obvious it would be horrible arguments galore, but even I was surprised at the quality of the reasoning presented by, of all people, an incoming UCI student. The first thing Columbabesh attempts is an appeal to tradition, saying circumcision is justified because,
well, we've always done it.
Not a great start. By pointing out that slavery is also an American tradition, I force him to come out front and admit he's specifically using Christianity as his reason. I tried to move things towards secular territory, the only place anything ever gets done. For whatever reason, being labeled an atheist is a great way for people to stop listening to you. Anyway, for a while he tries to list out some sensible benefits of circumcision, like the fact it means you don't have to wash your cock, and it provides minor health benefits. But it's pretty clear by now those medical benefits don't nearly merit non-consensual surgery, especially when you could just wait for a boy to grow up and decide for himself. But I guess he figures he has no actually good reasons to support chopping off the ends of baby boys' dicks, so he has to retreat into fuzzy territory where anybody can use God as justification for basically any claim whatsoever. Going back to my main point, the reason we should be teaching philosophy in school is for this precise reason. Columbabesh keeps retreating to more and more unfalsifiable territory because his goal isn't to reach the truth, but rather to convince himself that
I'm right all along, and when everything is subjective,
he thinks,
there's no way to prove anybody wrong.
Columbabesh uses religious belief in itself as a reason, as if belief in the supernatural gives you the right to magically circumvent whatever moral laws we otherwise establish. Columbabesh seems to think that if you believe something is true, that makes it true. When I point out that the ancient Aztecs used religious belief to justify human sacrifice, Columbabesh attempts to distinguish circumcision from human sacrifice because
circumcision is done with good intentions.
Even though the Aztecs themselves practiced human sacrifice not out of pure malice, but rather because they were trying to appease their own non-existent gods. Since he has nowhere left to go, he decides to simply label my comparison with the Aztecs
irrelevant,
without any evidence explaining why my analogy doesn't work. Every reason he uses to justify circumcision could also similarly be used to justify human sacrifice. And this gets us to the actual theological debate. At this point, Columbabesh is so determined to keep believing that cutting infants' dicks is somehow okay, that he has to staple himself to the one thing that requires no concordance with reason at all. That means not just religious belief in general, but his particular religion, which
couldn't possibly be wrong, could it?
Unfortunately for both of us, poking holes in religion is kind of my specialty. I knew it would be an exercise in futility to actually try to change his mind, but I just couldn't resist, so you guys get to watch the fireworks from that, I guess. One of the weird things about debating many Christians is that they aren't really fully aware of what they themselves actually believe. Like, most of them never even read the Bible. Columbabesh keeps claiming that God abhors human sacrifice and that only Jesus has the power to resurrect people, both of which are demonstrably false. In any discussion, I prefer for all speakers to, fully understand their own position. not only to be able to convey it to others, but to check whether their own beliefs align with reality. Unfortunately, I seem to know more about the Bible than this Christian does. How am I supposed to disprove someone who doesn't even really believe in what they themselves are espousing? Columbabesh can't seem to even out-Christian beyond philosophy the atheist. So here's where the fireworks begin. This next thing will make you want to plug your ears and poke your eyeballs out, because I'm about to show you the worst logic, like, ever. Columbabesh asks, if God isn't real, then how is Christianity so popular? As if the popularity of a belief has any bearing whatsoever on whether it is true. Then he asks why we count our years with the terms
before Christ
and
Anno Domini.
I wonder why the Gregorian calendar implemented by Pope Gregory contains references to Christianity. I shit you not. These are all actual arguments made by an actual person, presented all within a 2-hour span. And here's the kicker. Columbabesh asks, why does only the Christian God have a capital G? This guy got admitted into the fucking University of California, Irvine. He's supposed to be one of the smart ones. Have I been living in a dream world where everybody had some semblance of intelligence? How am I the same species as all these people? And speaking of species, purely theological discussion clearly isn't working, so I turn to all the scientific inaccuracies of the Bible instead. I figured that I don't have to disprove all of Christianity if I can just demonstrate that the specific biblical chapters Columbabesh uses to justify circumcision aren't reliable. But nope. When this guy, who I remind you is a science Olympiad medalist, is forced to choose between science and religion, his choice is clear. Mr. Honor Roll seems to have forgotten how evolution by natural selection works, instead believing in a literal Adam and Eve. He completely forgets how inbreeding works too, and he keeps asking me who the first humans were. Like, Columbabesh is really obsessed with firsts, as if there was ever a first human or a first living organism which suddenly popped into existence rather than forming from a long, gradual process like biology tells us. He also seems to think that just because scientists currently are unable to create life, that somehow disproves abiogenesis. When the top academic performers in our nation are scientifically illiterate, we know the American education system is a complete and utter failure. Seriously, science is just a theory? Please, tell me you're joking. Columbabesh's failure to provide sound arguments all trace back to the same root cause, a lack of philosophical knowledge. If high schools were to teach just the basics of logic and epistemology, everybody would learn that the logical burden of proof is on whomever makes the positive claim. Columbabesh seems to think that it's up to me to disprove his baseless assertions. I tried to explain to Columbabesh that the non-existence of God, just like leprechauns and unicorns or literally anything else, can't logically be disproven. But from that, his conclusion is,
I guess any and all beliefs are justified then.
the reason why positive rather than negative claims require the evidence isn't just about what is true, but the process we use to reach the truth. If we were to accept any explanation as long as it hasn't been completely disproven, it means we stop looking for the true correct answers. Why look for further explanation about biology if
God
answers the question just fine? It is our epistemic responsibility to withhold belief until we find sufficient positive evidence for a position. Otherwise, we might find ourselves unwittingly rationalizing the genital mutilation of baby boys, as Columbabesh has, or, in the case of the Aztecs, human sacrifice, all in the name of a potentially imaginary god. Today, we live in a post-truth society, and the effects of our intellectual complacency can be clearly seen in the rise of Trump and the political landscape he's brought along with him. In order to combat this, we must advocate for our schools to start over, teaching philosophy and the basics of thought to everybody. Then maybe, just maybe, we'll have more creative thinkers around and less straight-A idiots.
I'm and I approve this message.